Digitize the banking, don't digitize your relationship with your customer and be there for them in a human way.
Enough people had made deposits to help us bring this to life. That's a pretty cool circle of life of the dollar.
What is less convenient than getting out of the house and going to the branch? It's really not about convenience, it's about confidence.
Coming in here as this new guy from Atlanta, was that a challenge for you to come in there and help drive this thing forward? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. GetIndiana.com is your one-stop shop for everything Indiana, from festival and event guides to blog posts covering hidden gems, local businesses, small towns, and more. Check it out and learn something new about the Hoosier State at GetIndiana.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter right there at the top. My guest today is Jason Osterhage. He is president and CEO of Everwise Credit Union, a role that he's held since March of 2022. Before that, he studied at Georgia State University. He got an MBA from Emory down in, is that Georgia?
Atlanta,
Georgia, baby. Then he also did some postgraduate work at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management and Stanford University Graduate School of Business. This guy is a lifelong learner. I'm really excited to dive into this legacy credit union here in Indiana, what it's like to rebrand one of those legacy institutions here, talk about the impact that you all are making in the state of Indiana, and also we're going to definitely talk about the amphitheater downtown, whose name is on that, all that fun stuff. Because as a music aficionado, I have seen a large fan of your brand. I've seen it lots of times. I've very much enjoyed it. So
great.
Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay. We're gonna start off with the hard-hitting questions. All right. Not born in Indiana, not originally a Hoosier. You are one of the people we call a Hoosier by choice, correct?
Indeed.
You moved here in 2022?
March of 22.
Okay. We got to talk first impressions. You moved to Indiana, and you come here March of 2022. This is post-pandemic. So life is pretty normal at that point. What was the initial first impression of Indiana?
There's a lot more to it than I thought.
Oh, okay.
And maybe that is an experience that a lot of people have. If you haven't spent a bunch of time in Indiana, you think it's kind of a flyover place, right? But I had lived in Atlanta, as I said, Emory University there, since my grade school years, and then came to Chicago and spent 9 years in Chicago. Driven through, Indiana a couple of times.
Yeah, all right. Down 65, seen the windmill, said, all right, nice to see you. We're on to the next thing. So you get the opportunity to come down here and join, at the time, Teachers Credit Union. Correct?
Teachers Credit Union, headquartered in South Bend, Indiana. So I moved to South Bend.
Oh.
Yep.
So your first experience with the Hoosier State was in South Bend.
That's correct.
Thoughts? We just got back from there.
I really like South Bend. Yeah, I had an apartment there in South Bend, and I could kind of see the gold dome from my apartment window. And I would go, jogging on campus at Notre Dame. It's a beautiful town. Tradition,
history, the whole thing. I did one of those. It was a Friday morning, maybe a month or two ago. I'm jogging through campus on a Friday. The Irish had just won last week. We're getting ready for another game, and there's just a vibe. There's just the fall in northern Indiana is crisp, just a little crisper, coming off of Lake Michigan.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So you moved to South Bend. Today you are the CEO of Everwise Credit Union, but you joined a company called Teachers Credit Union.
That's correct.
And those are
not the same thing.
You did not get a different job, right? Okay. So you joined this organization in 2022. You moved to South Bend. Kind of as you took it over and got running there, I think the first thing we need to talk about is the difference between banks and credit unions, and how, this is a legacy business in Indiana, but I don't know if the average listener would know that difference there.
That's a great place to start. Maybe we could talk a little bit about Everwise and its history and kind of what's unique about it, and we'll get into more of that later, but we could also talk about what's the difference between a credit union and a bank. So Everwise, founded as Teachers Credit Union in 1931 in South Bend. So we're a 94-year-old organization. We're one of the oldest credit unions in Indiana, and today the largest credit union in Indiana. So we were founded by teachers, and historically you had to be a part of a kind of field of membership, as we call it, like a common bond. So for much of our history, you had to be a teacher to bank at Teachers Credit Union. But 25 years ago, that sort of changed a little bit, and we've grown across the state, and so we've continued to grow, and we are the largest credit union, as I said today. We have 50 branch locations across the state in various different regions.
That is an interesting piece of like, as I've learned and did some research on this, it was like there was a common bond of something, whether for you, the original company was teachers. So you would, and then if you were a teacher, you would get access to your financial.
Join. Right. So credit unions are customer-owned cooperatives. Here in a state like Indiana, an agricultural economy is important to us here. Yeah. Many Indiana folks, Hoosiers, are familiar with cooperatives. So we are customer-owned cooperatives. Our customers that bank with us, we call them members, and they own the cooperative.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The board is elected from the membership, so they're representatives of the members, and they govern the credit union.
So how do you choose who the board would be? Like, how do they pick? Is this like blind draw, like Sally that was a teacher for 10 years is now?
Probably less fun than that. So the board has a nominating committee, and if you're interested in serving, you can express your interest, of course, and the board vets candidates, and then every April, they're elected at a meeting of our members.
Wow. Okay. So this is a 94-year-old.
94-year-old.
So you joined when it was just over 90 years. You joined the organization.
92 years
What
old.
excited you about coming to join this organization, moving to South Bend, Indiana from Chicago?
I think it was as equal parts history and potential. Right. So the credit union is the largest credit union, and that means we're serving a lot of Hoosiers and we're doing a lot of good, and there's a lot to be proud of. In fact, Teachers Credit Union, now Everwise, has a history book. That we took the time a few years ago to go into the archives and interview a bunch of employees, and there's a 100-page glossy sort of full-color book that's all about the history of the credit union.
Why were credit unions so important, 94 years ago? This would have been what, the
1930s.
That's like not a good time for finance in general across
America. It goes
America.
back to the Great Depression. Right?
Yeah.
So the sort of average people had a hard time accessing banking and credit. And there was a cooperative banking movement. Kind of started in Germany, came into the United States through Canada. There's a guy named Edward Filene. He was a big businessman, kind of famous for Filene's Basement stores. Maybe you've heard of those. But so kind of in the northeastern United States, used to be a big retail empire called Filene's Basement.
Oh, okay.
And Edward Filene sponsored credit unions all over the United States in the 1930s to help normal people get access to banking and credit.
That's wild now, because I feel like today, whether it's lending or loans, like there are people that want to give you money for whatever you might need money for today. But yeah, in the 30s, like this is like right after the Great Depression, right around the Great Depression time?
During the Great Depression,
oh, yeah.
After it, yep.
Okay.
So very important for normal, everyday people to get access to banking and credit, and the industry has grown since then. And you're right, like I think modern banking is a lot more accessible to some people, but there are different challenges today. So one role that credit unions play in the banking industry is they serve local and rural communities, right? So as sort of banks and other organizations change their strategies, maybe close branches and move on, credit unions tend to stay very stuck in those communities and committed to them and serving.
Yeah, that is interesting. So I grew up in the small town of Bourbon.
Okay.
And we used to have the First State Bank of Bourbon, 2 locations. They were 2 blocks away from each other.
Yeah.
So like one drive-through location and one walk-in location. And I remember like going to college and like there's not a branch of the First State Bank of Bourbon anywhere. I'm 2.5 hours away from home.
Yep.
And that was the moment where I was like, man, I probably need to get like into a different bank because I can't really like, there's not a branch or anything I can walk into here. So that's interesting. And then we were a very rural community.
Right.
And it is interesting to like, and then they end up getting sold to another bank and it kind of like, it's like passed along. And a lot of times these rural communities don't get, maybe they get rolled up into and they're like, hey, drive 25 minutes to wherever. And it's like, if you get off work at 5 on a Friday or 4 on a Friday and you can't make it to the bank and cash your check, like these finance things are important.
It makes a difference. And there's actually a term for that. It's called a banking desert, a place where banking locations and services are hard to access. And that can sometimes occur in urban contexts, but also very often in rural communities.
Yeah. Like, okay. So you have 50 locations spread throughout the state.
Correct.
Do you kind of like cover all the areas?
Well, we cover a wide variety of areas. We're not in every part of Indiana. We have about 20 branches in central Indiana, of course, Indianapolis, Indy Metro, but communities around there. And then Michiana, kind of South Bend, that kind of South Bend Elkhart region is our home community, so we're very concentrated there. And then also Northwest, up near Chicago, we have some branches too.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Growing up in Northern Indiana, I definitely saw Teachers Credit Union, like in people's end zones on banners, like all sorts of, like, I think a staple of the Northern Indiana community. Like oh my God, I'm trying to remember what his name was, but like the local sports guy would be like out and there'd be like a TCU thing on the car. And then, so it's cool to see the evolution there. But I mean, today you guys are Everwise and you joined, and then a year later, you kind of like reintroduce Everwise Credit Union to the state. Take us through what the process of changing a 90-year-old brand and rebranding and reshaping it and finding this new identity looks like.
That is a great question and a cool story, and it really is all about a team. There's a whole team of people that do great work in order to make something like that happen. And I would say that you mentioned, I really love the fact that you mentioned our involvement with local schools. Obviously, that's a big part of our history, and it continues to be the case. So even though we are now what we would call a community credit union, really anyone can join Everwise, can bank with Everwise. We still are very close to the education community. We still work very closely with a lot of local schools. And so, and this is relevant to the brand story because we wanted to rebrand in a way that was true to who we were and who we will always be, but also gave us a better opportunity to tell the story about how everyone could participate.
Yeah, right. Because if it's, you would think you had to be a teacher to join Teachers Credit Union. You know, that's like marketing 101 right there.
Yeah, it says it in the name. And actually, we were led by data. So we were sort of looking at how we were growing and who was joining and banking with us. And we did the research. And the research came back and was pretty clear. Roughly 2/3 or 70% of people who did not bank with us thought they could not bank with us for that very reason. They're sort of like, well, it says teachers in the name. You know, I like teachers, but I'm not a teacher. So, and we had a lot of our frontline employees facing that challenge every day. They would have to tell people, oh, you don't have to be a teacher. It's not about really being a teacher. Come join the credit union.
This is interesting. And like the national comparison, this will make, I think, a lot of sense to people. If you've ever seen Rob Gronkowski talking about Navy Federal Credit Union, and he's like, well, you don't have to serve, but like your grandpa, and like, I feel like, this is broad generalization, but like almost everyone knows someone whose grandpa served in some branch of the military. So like they like really rephrase it of like, you know, almost everyone in America has a tie to Navy Federal Credit Union or something like that.
Yep.
So like you guys tell you, hey,
it's a great example.
Teachers, like it's a community financial partner here. Okay, so in 2022, when you join, was this already on the docket, or was this something you came in?
It was something we were talking about and working on, right? It's not something that we had finished internally, hadn't made final decisions around how to proceed, but it was something that the credit union was wrestling with.
Okay.
And so we were kind of looking at the question of, what to do with the brand. We've been an open kind of community financial institution. Any consumer or business could join and bank with us. But we didn't really feel like we were getting that message out there.
So one thing about legacy businesses that have been doing things a certain way for a really long time is they're not always the most receptive to abrupt change very quickly. And so you get the, I'll say, fun role of coming in here as this new guy from Atlanta, then to Chicago, coming to Indiana and saying, you know what? I know you guys have been doing this for 90 years, but I think that we should look at rebrand and championing this change and this brand refresh. Was that a challenge for you to come in there and help drive this thing forward?
It was a challenge, of course, and we could talk about how that worked. But there were, I think, that within the culture of the organization, the seeds to make it work. So one of the things I would say is when the board brought me into my leadership role, they were committed to growth and service. They were saying, hey, we're the largest credit union in Indiana, and that's pretty good, but we're not serving enough Hoosiers, and we'd be happy to serve beyond the borders of Indiana. And so we want to take care of more people, and we want to grow. And so that sort of ambition to grow was the thing that kind of opened the board's mind to what's it going to take to do that. And so this kind of mission to serve our customer owners and make their lives better financially is what got people thinking, what's it going to take to really do that? And then I think the other secret was just connecting to history. I mentioned how passionate this organization was about its history. And if you can kind of dig into that history and connect the history to the potential of the organization, then people start to believe, well, maybe we should try to do something better.
Where does it start? If you're going through a large corporate rebrand, and even renaming, where do you start? Like, what's the first meeting to kick something off? Like, do you have a marketing consultant come in and make a mood board and figure out all those things, or how does it look?
Yeah, it didn't work that way. Actually, we had a couple of executives on the team that were there before I was there, and they went to an industry conference and they heard stories of other credit unions rebranding, and they recognized that, well, this is some of the similar challenges we're facing. And then the other thing I already mentioned was the experience our employees were having. And even I saw this when I came in to join the organization, going around to talk to employees in branches, contact center, everyone serving our customers, the members. I got the same story. This sort of teachers credit union brand was a point of discussion. People were always talking about, well, it's really not about teachers, and we're about more than teachers. And so you could just feel a little bit the effort, the frustration that our employees were facing as they tried to take care of more people. So you kind of bring those things together, a sense of what's possible, stories of other organizations making those changes, and then sort of the real on-the-ground experiences. We're trying to serve people, and that's what, okay, there's something to do here.
Okay, so how long does the process take? How long did your guys' process take?
It took a while because there was leadership change and a pandemic in the mix. But I can tell you the process, right? So, first you start with understanding who you really are. So we did work with a third party to help us do it, and then we had a dedicated team internally of very smart people, and it was a multi-year process. But what you really do is you get in and you talk to your employees, you talk to your customers, you talk to your board of directors, you talk to people who don't even bank with you and say, what do we mean to you, and what should a financial institution be? And you really explore who you are, and then you explore who you want to be and your values, and you put kind of all that together.
Were there any of those conversations that really stuck out to you and resonated, and maybe still resonate with you today, of you're a couple months into this job, you're starting to have these conversations about your brand and what people are saying about it?
Well, there were so many stories from real people about how we made a difference in their journeys, right? In sort of where they went over the course of time, maybe what happened in their family and the journey of their family or their business. Their business started somewhere and ended up in a better place, and we were with them along the way. And so all of those stories really did end up informing what came to be our brand purpose.
Okay, so how does the idea or the action of changing the name, is it take me into the room? Are people sitting around there spitballing ideas? Are there is there a naming contest where you send out anyone submit your name? This is
all
school.
Of those things happen. Yeah. So for sure, there is brainstorming and spitballing, and we at Everwise, the employees on the team, did contribute to all of that. And then there's some professional work that goes into it too, kind of sharp people that help you come up with those things. And you ask employees for their input, and then it all goes into kind of like a black box where the pros help you look for a name that captures everything. And of course, there's the technical question of, can you trademark it, and is it protectable, is it unique, and all of those pieces.
How much is the URL going to cost?
Yeah.
Okay.
All that. And so you get to a short list and you pick the name that works best.
Where did Everwise originate from?
Well, Everwise is a word that puts together, it's a brand new word that puts together two ideas we really care about. And we think it goes back to our history of, education, learning, and growth, and human potential. And so this idea of constantly growing and developing and getting wiser.
Do you remember when you heard it for the first time, when someone was in a meeting and they were like, what about Everwise?
I do remember when I heard it for the first time, and it was actually just before I took the job, right? So I had a conversation with the executives who were working this project before I joined. And I was talking with the board about taking the role, and they said, hey, we want to brief you on the work we're doing here at Teachers Credit Union, and they walked me through it. And I remember them saying, well, here's the brand name we're considering now. We kind of settled on this term Everwise, and I was super thrilled. I felt like it was the growth mindset in a word, like in one word, this idea of just constantly learning and growing. No matter how wise you feel like you are, you're kind of ever wiser as you learn and grow. And it just really it spoke to me.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting piece of how that happens, like how you go through, the iteration. And I feel like that's like a pretty fun job. Whoever is like the third party that gets to like walk around and like, collect all the people's thoughts and then come up with something creative and cool. It's like, that's really fun. Like I don't know if there's anyone out there that wants to come on the show and talk about doing that sort of work, but it's interesting to get the emotions and the service and how your members feel, and to put that into a word that's going to be on the side of your buildings and on all of your marketing material and on your, different activations and sponsorships and things.
And I'm a big believer in the power of brand, and I feel like you can just feel it, you can sense it when you get it right. When the brand identity and the word and all the colors and all those pieces that come together in a complete brand, speaks to who you feel like you are and who you're trying to become. And all it just feels right. Yeah. That's pretty magical.
Like, there's not very many, I would say, bad brands where someone puts something out in the world and you're like, I just don't. There's a lot of just like, that's not bad. Like, it's okay. There's a lot of like, okay. But when you crush it and you get it right and it makes people just like light up and they're like, yes, I love that. That's really cool. Yeah, like, that is like the exponential, like you just, you have loyal members, the whole 9 yards there. Okay. So you guys decide on Everwise.
Yep.
How do you, oh my gosh, I have two very interesting to me questions about this. I'm going to start with one. How do you communicate this to an organization that spreads across the entire state and, again, has been doing something for over 90 years one way?
That's a great question, and you do it very carefully with planned change management and some showmanship. So one of the things we thought about is the brand is targeted at employees as well as the outside. We want to tell a story to our employees about who we are and who we're becoming, and we want them to feel proud and excited. So how do we launch the brand to them and involve them in that? So part of it was keeping it secret up front so we could have the right big reveal. But then the second part of it is bringing people into the know, in the know, and then helping them experience the brand as we roll it out over time. So the team did a really cool job with that. We actually brought everyone together, every Everwise employee in one place in Wabash, Indiana. And this was in late May of 23. We have about 750 employees, maybe a little more than that. And in the room, just over 100 folks knew that we were rebranding and knew what the brand was. So it was a pretty well-kept secret. And we brought them in there, and it was the first time the whole organization had gotten together in 9 years because, the pandemic and a few other things got in the way. So this is a big deal in the history of the organization. Every employee in one place for the first time in almost a decade. And we talked a lot about our history and who we were and where we've been. But the really whole point of the day was the brand reveal. And so we kind of told the story of the importance of brand and then the work we did. And then right before a lunch break where everyone kind of had a chance to go mingle and hang out and connect with their friends, we revealed the name. So Chief Marketing and Growth Officer Angie Dvorak on stage reveals the name, and it was super cool. And we had, like I mentioned, you want to think about the showmanship piece of it. So we had all of the old Teachers Credit Union colors, which were red and white and gray, and they were sort of all on the screens and the lighting. And then, Angie reveals the brand Everwise, and there's a little brand video that rolls out the brand, and all the lighting changes to purple. And I can feel chills just remembering the moment. People, they stood up and they cheered, and I had, one member of my board, a little, kind of tears in his eyes on the second row. So it's just like a super touching moment where people, you could tell the brand was connecting, right? They're like, this word, this brand holds our story and, holds our future, and it's really the right time to make a change.
Was it nerve-wracking?
Oh, yeah.
For you? I mean, I think about, because just as easy, and obviously, they're your employees and, they're going to be excited about the future and the growth of the company, but if they didn't, if there wasn't a standing ovation, there were no tears.
We were worried about it.
People would be upset.
We were worried about it because it is a 93-year-old company at the time, and we have very tenured employees who care a lot about the work they do, and they're proud of being Teachers Credit Union employees. So we're like, man, they might hate it. So but they didn't hate it.
Okay, they loved it.
They loved it.
And then you can like breathe again. And you're like, okay, now I haven't had lunch in the past 3 days. I can have lunch now. Like it works.
Yeah. And the other fun thing we did, I mentioned sort of after that, so the kind of the swag, the merchandise, that's super important. So we really cool, brand logo wear, and our employees have loved that. They sort of are always wearing Everwise clothing and colors, and that it's been really popular for people going into the Everwise merch store and buying stuff for them.
The second question kind of about a rebrand is the physical aspect of like going to 50 locations and changing all of the things. Like, how long does it take to change out 50 signs? Like, these big, like the actual physical structures. Like, that has to take a process.
It's a lot of work, and you can either do it quickly or you can do it over time. One approach is cheaper, but we thought it was really important to make the change rapidly, and we worked with our partners and internal employees, did an awesome job of planning all of that out. We staged it in advance, and you can't imagine the work that goes into it, because you have all these different locations in different cities, and there are different rules, and every branch is unique and different. You have to get permits from the city, and you kind of want to try to keep that stuff secret if you don't want the market to know you're rebranding, and just like all of this work. And then you got to design the signs, and people have to come out and measure it, and you got to fabricate all of those things, and then you have to stage all of those things. And so the team did a really awesome job. When the brand was revealed, within a matter of weeks, just a few months, we had almost everything changed over.
Wow. And one of the biggest signs of you all is downtown Indianapolis at White River.
Yeah, Everwise Amphitheater.
Yeah. Take me through that process. How long have you guys been on the naming rights of that?
It's been a number of years. I don't know when we started.
Was it before?
It was, yeah. So it was TCU Amphitheater before that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, so then you guys go through and it gets, and I'm sure that's kind of an interesting
And I kind of love
piece.
your reaction there, because it's sort of like, I don't even remember it being TCU. It's sort of in your mind, it's always been Everwise Amphitheater, which is kind of cool. But for several years before we rebranded, it was TCU.
And they probably thought, oh, wow, we're getting a new title sponsor for the amphitheater downtown. And that's kind of, I don't know, like a little bit of like, getting people to Google you guys and learn about, oh, this is this legacy Indiana brand. That's really interesting. I feel like that would be a big one too, if you're talking about all the signs that have to be changed. And
it's interesting because you have to work with that venue, and when are you going to rebrand with respect to their season. So we changed our name in June of 23, and obviously Everwise Amphitheater concerts are running all summer. And so, we could change some things, but we had to wait until the end of the season to change everything. So really, Everwise Amphitheater became fully converted for the next summer concert season in 24.
Yeah.
But it looks really great.
Yeah. Oh, and great venue. My favorite concert I've ever been to is there. It's a great, spectacular time. Yeah, it's so great. And you get to like go and experience downtown afterwards. Big proponent of being down there. So one thing I saw as we did our research was, since 2022, you guys have been growing fairly large amount, I would say, from the outside, not a credit union, employee. I think our numbers said from $4.5 billion to $5.5 billion in assets, 20% growth.
That's right.
Like, that's really, really impactful. And I think that as you think of what goes along with that, like, rebranding the company, growing, all these things, like, what's been fueling the growth for you all?
Dedication to serving our members, right? So understanding those consumers, what they're looking for, and trying to meet their needs. We have also been building new branches around the state. So we have a couple of new branches we've recently opened, a few more scheduled to open in northern Metro Indy. So we had, I think last year we opened one in Westfield, and we have one coming soon in Zionsville, and another one over in eastern Hamilton County. So we're continually opening locations, and that's driving growth as well.
In 2025, it's interesting that physical presence would be helping drive growth. I feel like everything is kind of like online, book here, like blah, blah, blah. You don't have to get off the couch, stay in your PJs. Why is a physical presence so important to the growth of your guys' organization?
There was a time in the banking business when everyone thought like the branch was dead. We just don't need branches anymore. That is not true. we and other banking businesses have found that branches are really important for growth. And people look at branches as a place like a safety net. If something's going wrong with my money or if I have questions, then I want to be able to go in and talk to someone. And it's a great place to get consultation and advice. So if you're looking for, to do something more complex, like I want to I think I want to buy a house. I think I'm ready to do that. You really do want to talk to someone. And there's been a lot of interesting data as Gen Z, kind of millennials, get older. They are starting to prefer branch-based organizations. They obviously at one time in their life, Chime and these other sort of digital banking businesses were attractive to them, but more and more, it's like the banks with retail locations are where they're going, and it's because of their time of life. Maybe they are a little bit more established. Maybe they have a little bit more in the bank to manage. Like, how can I be smarter with this money that I'm starting to accumulate? Maybe they're starting to form a household and they want to buy a home. And so branches are actually really important. What's key is it's a part of a mix, right? You have to be digital and available through all those channels, supported by a branch network.
You know who is the most worried about bank branches and financial institution branches failing? Dumb suckers. Their business would have plummeted without banks. Oh my gosh. Like that was my favorite part of going. I mean, talk about secondary effects there. Like, I don't know how many dumb suckers are sold to financial institutions across the country, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and dog treats now too.
Oh, you can bring dogs into the bank?
I've seen, we go to the drive-thru and they give a treat to the dog. Yeah.
The pup cups, but for dogs? There we go. Who would have thought of, ask about that next time you're at your financial institution. Yeah. But I just remember the mystery suckers. Like I would always get to pick one of those out there. Mrs. Fisher, I was in her, she would just always give me a sucker every time we went in there. I was like, let's go.
And they're like, what's the flavor of this one?
It's interesting because it also it gave me a fond experience of the bank. Like I still get a sucker today. That's why I can't go in there very often or I'd be like 5,000 pounds. But I love it. And it was like, it is interesting, like the psychology of that though. I liked going into the bank because it was like we were doing our whatever and I would get a sucker and it was like, for me, I was like, I need to go deposit more money into the bank. Obviously, deposits, not withdrawals for me. But it was like I would go in there and I would like it and I would get my sucker and I'd feel good. And, I don't know. There's something about that helps, with kids. If it's all digital, I don't know if that's necessarily reinforcing the same sucker habits that I learned as a kid. This is like way off in a
No, I love it. Well, I know that's a great point. I think it's easy to get carried away with technology. Like you think, well, because we could do it with technology, we should do it. But that's not always the case. I think banking can be digital and should be digitally enabled, right? But humans aren't digital, right? And so banking is a very human thing. So how are you connecting with the people you serve in a human way?
Yeah.
And so digitize the banking, but don't digitize your relationship with your customer and be there for them in a human way.
It does seem like maybe the last decade, it was very much like technology, product efficiency, like the best, most quickest way to do everything. And now it's like we've got there. It's like you could type one thing into AI and like it's done quickly. And people are almost like, I see like this pendulum swinging back a little bit of like, well, I like the little chit chat and knowing my banker, and I like to go in and and it's like an experience and showmanship. Do you live in Indianapolis?
I'm in Carmel now.
You're in Carmel? Okay.
Yeah.
So have you been to Sullivan's?
Yes.
Hardware? Sullivan's like lawn and garden? Okay.
Yeah.
So I had Pat in here, and it's like on the surface level, it's a hardware store, but he learned this, I don't know, 20 years ago. And he's like, I have to give people a reason to get off the couch. Like the rise of e-commerce, all these things. Like we wanted to create this experience at our store that got people out of their pajamas, off the couch, and in here. And I think that now more than ever, that matters. Creating an experience that gets people off, like whether it's having the most friendly and knowledgeable, customer service tellers, people like that, like just creating this ambiance of this is an enjoyable experience that is, you're going to like it more than just like clicking a few buttons on your phone or whatever.
100% agree. And for us, banking really isn't always about entertainment and an experience, but there is a similar principle. At Everwise, we have like a tagline, a principle that we say confidence changes everything. And we want people to have confidence in themselves and in their finances, but confidence in us as their banking partner. So that's sort of a key idea for us. Historically, people would talk about in banking, well, retail convenience. Do you have convenient branch locations? How convenient are your branches competing on convenience? This was sort of a big idea in banking years ago. But to your point, we think in the world, post-pandemic world, post-Amazon world, you don't even really have to put on your pants to go to work so much anymore. No. So what is less convenient than getting out of the house and going to the branch? It's really not about convenience. It's about confidence, right?
Yeah.
So we say retail confidence. Can people have confidence in Everwise and in our ability to serve them, and do our retail branch locations improve their confidence in us and themselves?
Well, one way obviously is giving confidence to whether it be your members, whether it be your employees, all that as well. But you're also out in the community helping instill confidence in different organizations. I know we were looking through, and you guys do a lot of like your day of giving. You guys are out like, what, your employees are at like over 45 nonprofits?
Day of Giving is a fun story, and it's sort of like a visible tip of the iceberg of all the things we do in the community. I'll tell you about Day of Giving. It's probably a 7 or 8 year old tradition at Everwise, Teachers Credit Union before, and the whole company gets behind it. So we kind of take a holiday in October, and all the employees go out, and they, as groups, volunteer with different organizations around the community and all the communities that we serve. So this year we had more than 600 Everwise employees at 45 locations all around the state in one day volunteering to contribute to their communities.
Holy. Okay, have you been to all of the locations?
I have not personally been. Usually I try to get out there and spend some time with teams and go around to different ones.
What have been some of your favorite communities to go visit?
Here's one I'd like to tell. A couple years ago, at Day of Giving, there was a group in Fishers at this place I think is called Million Meals. They kind of, So we were sort of packing food there, and it was a lot of fun to sort of put these kits together, and we were competing to try to get as many as we could done against another sort of Everwise team.
They've gamified that whole experience and created something very fun. And the meals that you create there are making an incredible impact. It's like, I think one of those feeds like 5 people or something like the bags that you seal or whatever. Yeah. Insane. Yeah. Okay, but then as you've gone out and from South Bend up in the the Chicagoland area up that way north. Actually, no, I don't want to say Chicagoland. I want to say the Northwest Indiana. Yeah. Right? Some people might call that the region. As you've gone to different locations there and traveled around the state, have there been any places that you really love visiting that maybe were unexpected?
In Mishawaka.
Yes.
Right, there is a great little place called Jesus Tequila Bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you been there?
Yeah. So good. It's like right by the Sun King up in that area, like a little bit south of the Riverwalk.
Yep.
Yeah. That place, it's like in an old Carnegie library.
Yes, it is.
It's like Latin American cuisine. Right. It's not like, I think some people think of like Hacienda Mexican restaurant in Northern Indiana, and they're like, okay, cool. Another one of these average, like very normal Mexican restaurants. This is like upscale Latin American cuisine with like a chef and stuff. And
and from different parts of South America.
Yeah, too. It's so good.
Yep,
phenomenal.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good little spot up in Mishawaka. Yeah. I mean, obviously the roots of Everwise are up in Northern Indiana.
Right.
How did it get started? What was was it someone that an individual that championed this up in there?
Yeah, it was just a few teachers from the South Bend public school system got together.
Wow. And they're like, you know what? Let's get our collective buying power or whatever and help
That's exactly
make that
right.
more.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Pooled their resources so that they could help make loans to each other, small dollar loans. And it grew from there.
Whenever I guess growing up, I thought of It's a Wonderful Life. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like the bank and trust. You know what I'm talking about? This movie.
I know exactly what you're talking
there's
about.
A run on the bank, and he's talking his the locals off of the cliff of it's okay. That's really interesting to see people. Again, this is the 1930s.
Yeah, it's a great example though, because credit unions are very much like Wonderful Life type organizations. In that movie, there's Mr. Potter, sort of the kind of the cruel businessman across town, right? And then there's George Bailey running the local community bank. And I think credit unions are just like that. They're drawing deposits from local community, then they're lending in that same local community. Credit unions really don't have shareholders at all. Credit unions never distribute capital outside of the business. So all of the profits that come from credit union operations go back into the business to serve the local community and the members.
I would actually be curious, the average person even knew how that all worked. It's like, hey, when you deposit $1,000 into your credit union account, your savings account, whatever that looks like, it is going out to fund someone's who's getting a business banking loan to start their ice cream shop or whatever it could be, or it's going to maybe like college, student loans or different things, like the way that your capital is deployed to your local community and like the economics behind that working in your local communities. Like that's really fascinating to me.
I don't think it's well understood. And to your point, I mean, really, when depositors put their dollars into a financial institution, then the financial institution basically is buying or renting those dollars, right? So you kind of pay interest on that, and it's kind of like I'm renting or buying your dollars to resell them to someone else, right? I lend them back out to a borrower, and sort of managing that thing is the thing that kind of makes banking work. And so people who are saving in the community are basically helping people who are borrowing in the community.
Yeah. Where do you feel like, from like a lending side, where are you guys like specialized? Like, are you like commercial lenders? Are you like,
We are, yep.
Like are there any like projects? Because sometimes you see like a bank is like, hey, we finance the new XYZ thing. Are there any big projects like that you guys have helped be a part of around the state of Indiana?
Yeah, there's a handful of them, and I probably won't remember them all off the top of my head. But yeah, so we are very much a commercial lender.
Yeah.
We also do auto loans to consumers and mortgage loans to consumers. So we have a lot of credit lines of business.
I think that sounds like it's hard because in marketing material that can sound like fluffy maybe of like, we are, but then when you see it in practice and you're like, hey, the new hospital in rural small town Indiana was financed by this because enough people had made deposits in this across the state to like help us bring this to life. Like that's a pretty cool like circle of life of the dollar in the state of Indiana.
It's an important way that banking institutions contribute to their communities.
Dude, maybe I'm just like getting my mind blown right now, but that's interesting to me. Or like, so-and-so went to college or so-and-so got their first car and it came because enough people had put, their savings accounts into this bank.
That's exactly how it works.
Wow. It just feels more real when it's in Indiana, versus like goes out to.
That's why it is important to bank local, right?
Yeah.
With good credit unions and community banks based here. Because if you're banking with Chase, for example, a big global bank, they're doing the same thing, but they might take your savings dollars and lend it out in another part of the country or somewhere else.
Is there like restrictions of like, does anyone, big national bank, have to like equally distribute loans based on where their members are?
No.
All right, bank local. There it is. Like that'd be interesting if like all of your Indiana big bank dollars were going to the coast. I'd be a little upset about that, I feel like.
Yep.
That's something to think about.
Something to think about.
Oh, okay. So when you talk about supporting local as well, I think that a lot of people do think okay, I'm not going to buy my Christmas candles from Amazon. I'm going to buy a warm glow candle, and I think when it's like tangible things, people definitely like on Small Business Saturday, people are thinking about shopping local more. Besides seeing the dollars reinvested in your community, in the way we just talked about, are there other ways that like banking with a local credit union, banking like with a local organization, it's like why people should do that?
A banking business like Everwise, if it's thriving, right, is a great local employer.
Yeah.
Right? So you're kind of supporting your family and friends that might be working at that organization. And then Everwise is a big contributor to community causes. So even above and beyond the Day of Giving, for example, Everwise, and we have a foundation, the Everwise Foundation, we've contributed almost $1 million to scores of organizations around Indiana. So there's like a philanthropic thing that we do.
Where if you don't have create shareholder value, the classic, like profits can be redistributed, or I don't know how that all works or whatever, but like it's making an impact in your local communities.
Well, for credit unions, we don't have shareholders and we're not taking value out of the business and sending it to shareholders. So we create member value. Right, so when we perform highly, we reinvest in the business and we improve the products and services we give to members and better support communities. That's
very, very interesting. Like how the sausage is made of local financial institutions, I think is fascinating. And there's a very great story to be told of like why this is important. And I think that the other piece too, for like entrepreneurs and business owners out there, I got the advice of like building banking relationships with these more local / regional institutions, because like you're not just going to be the number where it's like, is your revenue this? Have you been in business this long? Blah, 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 like all those things. Like, yes, those are important, but like where you can walk in and talk to someone and they're like, I don't know, like it just like having that personal relationship is important.
That's 100% correct.
And it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And it's important too, beyond just the way you feel, it's important for access and equity. So here's something that's interesting to think about. In the United States, we have a very large banking industry. You may not know this, but if you add up all the banks and credit unions, there's almost 9,000 institutions across the country. And that's a smaller number than it used to be, but 9,000 independent banking charters and credit union charters when you add it all up. What's interesting about that is it's very different in every other country in the world. Places like Canada and the United Kingdom and European countries, Australia, their banking sectors are much smaller, far fewer institutions. There might be like 5 or 6 big banks that serve all of Canada, whereas in the United States, there's 4,200 banking businesses and 4,400 credit unions. And why does that matter? Well, it's because that creates a lot of variety. It creates a lot of banking businesses that care about specific communities. It creates banking businesses that are willing to take risks on certain people. If you're in a country that has few institutions, and like if you're not considered bankable by the 6 banks, you're in trouble. You can't get banking services.
What do you do?
Like you just don't get a loan, right? So that's one of the reasons why the U.S. economy is so dynamic, is because we have so many banking businesses, and we have small ones, and we have big ones, and we have local ones, and we have regional ones, and we have credit unions, which are cooperatives, and we have banks, which are for-profit, and they all play an important role. And so because you have that variety, that makes our economy more dynamic. Different kinds of businesses can get different loans from different credit unions and banks with different risk appetites. And so that's super important. And I worry that the banking industry can shrink too much, right? As over time, if there's consolidation and mergers, and maybe the burden of regulation becomes so high that operating costs rise, it would be unfortunate if our economy started to look like the Australian economy and we just had 25 institutions. It's better to have thousands.
Like if you could fit the leaders of all the banks of a country in a room for dinner, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing.
I don't think it is.
No, because then it's like also like competition also like breeds excellence, where it's like you're forced to, create the best products, have the best service, like win. And that drives like better experience for us as individuals.
And you have a chance of banking with someone who cares about your community and cares about you. That's why I'm bringing it back to this idea of being more than a number.
Yeah.
Because if there's only 10 or 20 institutions in a country, every time you walk into that place, it's like, well, just a whole bunch of numbers.
Yeah, almost 9. You said over 9,000 different banks and credit unions.
Nearly 9,000 banks and credit unions. Yeah.
I wonder what the smallest one is. Like I wonder where the smallest.
I don't know the banking sector as well, but there are some credit unions that are less than $1 million in size. They're very small.
That was probably like the First State Bank of Bourbon. I don't know what it was back in the day, but this probably got sold in 2015 or 16, and it's like 2 locations in Bourbon, baby. Let's go. Like that's interesting. Wow, I didn't know that number. That's fun. I do want to round out the show, and I want to talk about your experience coming to Indiana. I kind of hinted at that at the beginning and talked about, right, you come from the South to Chicago to South Bend, now to Carmel, Central Indiana. Where do you think we could do a better job? As you grew up, what did you think about Indiana, as you, advanced in your professional career, and you were just next door, but what were your thoughts of Indiana while you were in Chicago? Did you think of Indiana?
Yeah, I'd have to say I didn't often think of Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't, and not that I was trying to ignore it, but kind of low profile in my experience before coming here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times it's like, there are places like Texas or California or New York or Florida. And
a lot of mind share. People thinking about those places all the time.
They either love them or you hate them. And what I find, especially people that are from here, it's usually like, well, I didn't really think about Indiana at all. And that's interesting. And it's obviously a little piece of what we're trying to change here.
Yeah.
What has surprised you the most? Like when you came to Indiana from Chicago, what blew your mind?
One of the things that I've loved discovering is the geographic variety of the state. Like if you don't spend time here, it's easy to think, well, maybe it's kind of just a lot of farmland, right? But that's not the case at all. If to go around the state, there's a lot of great variety. We have a little bit of coastline, right? We have a little bit of coastline. We have some rolling hills and great forests and like a lot of variety.
I think everyone, just says it's just flat cornfields and blah blah blah. And it's like there are parts of the state that are that, and maybe that's the part that people have driven through in the past. But there is a ton of really interesting stuff. And like I just watched this whole video about where the glaciers stopped. I think it's Martinsville. And so that's why like they stopped there, and that was what created all this like fertile farm ground from like Indianapolis north. And the rolling hills of southern Indiana are kind of like an extension of that like Tennessee, Kentucky, Smoky Mountain feel. And it's really interesting as you bring people here and take them to different parts. Like, I mean, the average person, I feel like in South Bend has never been to Evansville.
Probably not.
The average person in Evansville has never been to South Bend. And I've been to both. Actually, in 2 weeks, like in the span of 14 days, I went from South Bend to Fort Wayne to Indianapolis to Evansville. I may be one of the, I don't know how many people have done that in a short period of time, but seen the 4 major cities of Indiana. And it's so interesting of like the lack of connectivity between those different pieces. It's just been something that I've been really fascinated about. Like people in Fort Wayne have no idea what's going on in Evansville, and like the river there. Like the Ohio River is crazy. And then people in Evansville have no idea about like the Golden Dome of Notre Dame and like the tradition and that feel of like lake effect snow.
It is interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that's just like my tangent of like the state of Indiana. What has surprised you and what have you enjoyed about living in Indiana and becoming a Hoosier by choice?
The people here are great. So I have definitely encountered a welcoming culture and built a lot of fast friendships.
Was it like a little bit at first, like you're like, what's going on here? Like, I feel like a lot of people come in and it's like, are these people that nice? Like,
I did not have that experience because remember I was raised in the South, right? So kind of Southern hospitality and that I was used to. So it felt a little bit like coming home, but a Midwestern version of that. So I really appreciate the hospitality.
Are there some similarities between the South and Indiana and some key differences between the South and Indiana besides weather?
I do think that culturally there is a lot of similarity. I think people kind of take pride in home, and they are friendly and hospitable. And I do think there is a quintessential American energy about Indiana that is similar to certain parts of the South.
Okay. Here's a little thought exercise.
Okay.
If you could bring one thing from Atlanta to Indianapolis and give one thing from Indianapolis to Atlanta, like share, what would you bring from Atlanta to Indy, and what would you share with Atlanta from Indy?
I think people in Atlanta would not like to hear this, but I would like to move the weather, right? Because I actually like the 4 seasons. And I think the summer in the South can get pretty warm. So, nice 4 mild, manageable seasons. So I would move the weather.
Wow, they would be so upset. The snowplows, do they have snowplows in Georgia?
No.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to invest in that.
No, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so I do think 4 seasons it's also a piece of like what make Hoosiers, like you're constantly looking forward to something. Like, oh yeah, like I can't wait till the fall comes, and then the fall gets here, and you're like, shoot, I can't wait till the first snow, and then you're like, I can't wait till summer. It's interesting. I like the 4 seasons as well. Okay, if you could bring something to Indy from Atlanta, what would you bring?
The great Southern cooking they have.
Ooh. Yeah. Is there like a specific spot that you're like, man, hey, if so-and-so's restaurant opened up a second location here in Indy, you'd be a frequent flyer?
Southern Soul Food Kitchen. That's really great.
Well, that leads us perfectly into this segment. This question is brought to you by our friends at JC Hart. They're a leader in creating enjoyable living experiences at apartment communities all across Indiana and beyond. Check them out at home.jchart.com. So my question for you, Jason, is why do you call Indiana home?
Well, I think the very first reason is I had the opportunity to come lead a great organization. So I took that invitation. But now I think that Indiana is a perfectly balanced place that is on the edge of, I think, a great next few decades. I think the Midwest, especially sort of the Great Lakes region, is positioned to do really well over the next couple decades, even better than it has over the last 20 or 30 years.
Well, you have spent time studying at Northwestern, at Stanford, Emory. Like you seem to know a little bit about education and like what are these leading indicators that are making you feel so bullish on the Midwest?
What goes down must come up, right? So for a while, the Midwest has been a little bit flyover, and we're ready for our next wave of popularity. And you kind of see that. You see people from the coasts sort of coming this way. And I think it's kind of time for the Midwest to become popular again. And I'm not a historian, but if you think roughly back over history, there have been a couple of times when the Midwest got really popular, right? So after the colonial period, people moved inland, and there was a lot of growth in the Midwest. And then people moved even further west, and the Midwest got quiet. Right, and then there was an industrial revolution, and there was a lot of boom in the Midwest, and then the economy changed, and the Midwest got rusty. And so now it's time, I think, for us to boom again. It's like it comes in cycles. So I think that's one part of it. And I think we're on the right side of globalization trends. Yeah. I think as sort of the global economy changes, there's going to be more coming back our way, and I think we're on the right side of distributed work trends. Like I don't have to move to a coastal expensive city a long way away and I can still get a great job. I think I might rather just stay here. And I think a lot of people are going to feel that way over the next 20 to 30 years. And I think we're on the right side of climate change trends. I mean, I think that I'm not here to debate why the climate is changing, but I think if you talk to people who work in the insurance business, their spreadsheets tell them, the climate's changing. And if there's a corner of the world that's going to net benefit from climate change, I think it might be ours. And we're on the right side.
I mean, I don't want to spend 12 months a year sweating. Right. Not good for me. It is interesting. You talk about like where it's time to shake some of the rust off. Let's keep rolling, Indiana. Come on. Yeah. Before we started recording, you said that you were very, interested in furthering knowledge, like very curious, always learning. Is there something, could be related to credit unions or could be related to like something totally random? Like what are you learning about now that's just fascinating you?
Well, I'll tell you what's fascinating me. It may not be fascinating to the audience here, but I am really interested in corporate governance, like how boards run businesses.
Yeah, I don't know if that's interesting.
But not to your audience.
Yeah,
maybe?
what's the resource? Are you going to like corporategovernance.com? Like, what are you learning from that? Like, what resources are you looking at to learn about that?
Well, there's a lot of great resources out there, but one organization that my board is involved in is called the National Association of Corporate Directors, right? And this might seem really boring to you, but I would tell you that the people at the very top of an organization and how they govern that organization have a huge impact on how successful it is. And I would say that Everwise is fortunate to have a board that's committed to learning, development, and growth and getting better. And one interesting thing about boards is boards are kind of a weird group of people that need to govern themselves, right? Often, no one is really watching a board very closely because everyone else is busy doing the things they have to do every day. And so it really requires a mature person to be a good board member and to help contribute to a great board. You have to sort of govern yourself, and you have to make sure you yourself are getting better and you're good enough to govern an organization. And I feel like my board is doing that kind of work and kind of improving themselves for the benefit of the credit union. And it's a really interesting thing, surprisingly interesting.
Corporate governance. I'll get on random rabbit holes about all sorts of things. So like I'm all here for it.
Yeah. I know it doesn't make me sound cool, but it's an honest answer.
But I appreciate that, if there was a piece, maybe a book or a podcast or a video or an article or something that you've consumed that helped you with leadership, that helped you like whether it's from change management to all these different things, is there something that sticks out that you would recommend to listeners to check out?
One I like to recommend, and maybe you've got this recommendation before, it's a Simon Sinek book called Leaders Eat Last.
Oh. Yeah. So it's on my list to read. Give me the...
I highly recommend it. It's my favorite of all the Simon Sinek books I've read. But he sort of talks about how leadership really comes out of human culture and like the brain chemistry of that, sort of the dopamine and the serotonin and the cortisol and managing all of those things in groups, and how the role of leaders is really to serve the group, and how leaders who eat last are the ones who make the biggest difference. I highly recommend it.
I like that. All right. It's on my list. I'm currently finishing up Grind It Out, the story of Ray Kroc.
Okay.
It's so interesting. He was such a wild card guy. He started he kind of got into the McDonald's industry when he was 52.
Yeah.
So he's not a young guy, and just literally grinded this thing out and blew it up to what it is today. It's such a wild, fascinating story.
I love business biographies.
Yes.
Yeah. And the history of businesses. Maybe you've heard of this podcast before. There's one out there called Acquired. Have you heard of that? Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Or getting the whole history of a business and how it fits into the history of the time.
Yeah, it's are we weird because that's entertaining to us? Probably a little bit.
Probably.
Amazing. Okay, we've come to the part of the show where we ask the same 3 questions to every guest that comes on. Obviously, you've been a few different places, right? You've been to Chicago. You grew up in St. Louis and Atlanta. Been here, there, out, studying with Stanford, studying with Northwestern, all these places across the country. But what is something the world needs to know about Indiana?
I can go 3.
Let's get them, all 3.
So one of them I already mentioned was the geographic variety. Another one, Indiana has some really beautiful county courthouses.
Speaking my language.
If you see these courthouses, they're beautiful sort of masonry structures, and I think Indiana was developing at the golden era of courthouse design and construction.
Architecture there.
Yeah.
So I've been to 50. I've been to 50 of the 92 counties in Indiana. My goal is to get to all 92. There are some incredible ones that are so cool. And there's some ones that are it's unfortunate. There are a few counties that whether it was destruction or fire or different things that have had to move or get newer buildings, they've tried to preserve some of the older ones, but they might not be functioning anymore. I'm thinking about Martin County, for instance. They couldn't get in and do all the ADA accessibility stuff, so it's a museum now, and they had to move their government building. But there are some really. Is there one that you've seen that just blew your mind?
I can't think of one because there's so many great ones. What's your favorite?
One that's the most interesting one. One of the most interesting ones is Paoli. It's built on a roundabout. It's so interesting, and it's elevated, and there's big cannons out front. That one's pretty cool.
And there's another one that has a tree growing from the roof.
That's Greensburg. Yep. That one's very interesting. They've been on Ripley's Believe It or Not twice. People from around the world come to see the tree in Greensburg. Tree City. Come on. Another fun one is Lebanon. So this is Boone County. Lebanon, I talked about this the other day too. I have such random knowledge. They had the largest single piece columns. The columns at one point were the largest columns in the world, I believe.
That's crazy.
Because they're so big, and the largest single piece columns. The columns, measuring 35 feet 3 inches, were at the time of their construction the tallest solid columns in the U.S. And it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1986.
That's very cool. That's what I'm talking about. There's
Boone
some
County.
Great courthouses in this state.
I love it.
And then the third thing I would say people need to know about India is just how culturally important the 500 is, right? Everybody knows about the Indy 500 race, but before I came to Indiana, I thought, well, there's race weekend. It's kind of like a big football game, right? But no, right? It's the whole month, and I didn't know that before I came here. And it's the whole state, from top to bottom, up and down, every, sort of class of society, every kind of person is into it. And it's kind of like, Louisiana has Mardi Gras, and we've got the Indy 500. And there's these things sometimes in different parts. There's a 30-day rodeo in Houston, the Houston Rodeo, which is kind of cool. Well, we have the 500. And so I don't think people from elsewhere know how culturally important it is.
And words can't describe it. When you walk in on race day for the first time and you've never seen it and you don't realize how big it is. I've had a few IndyCar drivers in here. I'm Marcus Ericsson, and he came, from Sweden, I believe, or Denmark, one of those two places. And he's I got off the airport and I made them drive me past the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And it was just it took your breath away. It's crazy. Do you remember the moment you walked into the Speedway for the first time on race day and what your initial thoughts were?
Yeah, I'm totally blown away. Right, exactly. Yeah,
yes.
It's a massive facility, and there are just hundreds of thousands of people everywhere, and the costume choices are fascinating.
I'll give a subtle plug to go back and listen to our episode with Doug Bowles, and he gave his hour by hour race day itinerary for him. And it's insane of what he has to do to help put that thing on. It's wake up, put my blue suit on at 2:15 in the morning, and then get there and pass out donuts and do this. It's crazy. That's very awesome. Fun. All right, next question. This is your opportunity to enlighten the listeners about a part of Indiana that's special to you that more people need to know about. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
It's in South Bend. There's a barbershop I go to there that is spectacular. It's called Denolf's Barbershop. Nathan Denolf is the guy who runs it. He's a local business owner, and he's just a unique character, and he has a whole bunch of unique characters in there that cut hair. And he's really committed to the South Bend community. He's been around for a few years, recently relocated to South William Street, just a couple blocks from Everwise headquarters. They've got a great barbershop dog there, a Springer Spaniel named Finley.
Barbershop dog?
Yeah. And
Denolf's.
Yeah.
Yeah, the barbershop they're like a lot more than just a barbershop. They're hosting like a run club. They have events.
Super committed to community life there.
That's awesome. Wow. Look at that. What was the guy's name?
Ethan Denolf.
Ethan Denolf. Good for that. Well, speaking about people, this is our final question of the show. This is where we get recommendations for future guests or learn about people that are making a huge impact in Indiana. Who's a Hoosier that we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
Mark Tarner, and he runs the South Bend Chocolate Company. Have you heard of this
/ Dinosaur
Yes.
Museum,
And
right?
you asked earlier about, is there a project that Everwise is sort of proud of financing? Well, we financed the Dinosaur Museum.
Let's go. I've heard on multiple occasions that this is one of the most interesting people in the state of Indiana.
Have you had him on the show?
No, I haven't.
You need to get him on the show.
We need to get him on the show for sure.
If you need help, I think we can help.
Yeah. We need an intro, and we need next time he's down in Indianapolis, we need to get him in the studio because this guy. So he saw South Bend Chocolate Company, but then he also started he just collected a bunch of dinosaur bones and then made a museum.
It's a personal hobby of his. He's been going out west, and he has a big collection. And he thought, hey, it would be a great idea to open a dinosaur museum. And he also moved his chocolate manufacturing facility over there and has some other cool things. But it's a really cool museum.
Yeah. Okay. So we would say go to check out the museum and get some chocolate.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say people in South Bend, I've gotten the recommendation 2 or 3 times of you've got to talk to this guy because he's fascinating.
Yep.
I love it. And chocolatier, come on, let's go. I love it. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show today, sharing about your journey from the South up here to Indiana and the impact that you get to make today with Everwise. I think it's so awesome to learn more about how local financial institutions can make an impact in our community. I think that hearing you tell the story of the impact of depositing dollars in today is helping finance dinosaur museums in South Bend. That's pretty cool. And learning about how this started 94 years ago. And a few teachers banded together and they needed the opportunity. That's see an impact and go make the change that you want to see in the world. I think that's a super cool heritage to continue on. And hearing about the process of going through a corporate rebrand, that is big, heavy stuff to do and challenge. And you did a great job of explaining that in a way that I could understand. So I appreciate that. Thank you for coming on. Keep up all the great work with everything y'all are doing. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all my gear recommendations at Sweetwater. If you want a behind-the-scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.